Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of ABA Mom. I'm your host, Allie, a board certified behavior analyst and mom to 5 kiddos. And today I'm so excited to introduce medium Sean Michael Rutherford, widely known as Medium Auntie Sean on social media. And I am just so excited to have him on the ABA Mom podcast. Sean is a psychic medium and spiritual personality who has built a strong online presence through heartfelt readings, affirming messages, and candid conversation about intuition, grief, and healing. As medium Auntie Sean on social media, he is known for his warm, direct, compassionate style that blends humor with emotional depth. Sean, I am just so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Allie. It is when you mentioned the podcast, I was like, please have me on this. This is
Yeah.
so cool. Not me looking like
Yeah.
Duke Dastardly over here, like, ha 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 ha. I'm gonna get on that podcast.
Yeah, we met, I was on your live and we were talking and I just happened to mention, I think I just went through all of the things that I do, which most people go, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? But you just had such a great, presence and sense of humor. And I was like, it would be so much fun to have you, especially as a psychic medium.
The short way of talking about my personality is to say jaded. But yeah,
Sean, can you just share just a little bit about your background?
yeah. So I grew up in a Cajun family. My mom's side of the family is Cajun. So spiritual practices were very liberal. It wasn't like a you have to practice this or because my mom's family was a very Cajun Catholic, which is faith healing meets going to church on Sundays. And so, like, my mom was very much like, no, we don't have to do this, but we're going to believe in the faith healing kind of thing. And so I grew up in this very, like, if you experience something, you talk about it because nobody shamed you. And so as a kid, I just experienced all these very spiritual things in our house, spirits, loved ones. I would know things about people that I shouldn't have known. And as I got older, it became much more prevalent. And I was like, hi, mom, help. And she's like, what's wrong? You're Cajun. Of course you see dead people. And I'm like, that's not a help. And so it became at 14 studying this with every fiber of my being. Because I had to make sure that I wasn't schizophrenic. Because I was like, I have to know this. And so I was like, I'm probably just crazy. But then things ended up being accurate. Like I would talk to somebody and I'd be like, oh yeah, this happened to you. And you're like, how'd you know this? And I did this with a bunch of bullies. So at 14, I was homeschooled after I got attacked by 10 guys. And I had really bad anxiety and I started noticing my intuition a lot more. And so I started like remembering the things that I saw about my classmates who bullied me, about how so and so's, parent abused them this way and so's parent abused them this way, or, and I messaged all of them on MySpace. And I was like, I know this happened to you. I'm so sorry that you went through this. And I understand I was just a scapegoat. And I think out of like the 15 people I messaged, I think 10, 12 of them messaged me back, like, how did you know that? And I was like, I'm 17 years old, realizing that all the experiences I've ever had were valid. And now I'm like in the age range for schizophrenia to activate. And I'm like, okay. And I got really serious about it. And then it's been 20 years and I love it. I love nothing more. And I will do this until the day I die. And then I'm a spirit where I'm going to bother other mediums.
Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. And you were so young and that would be really scary, to like think that like, oh, maybe this is schizophrenia. Like that is like a
Oh, yeah.
really scary thought too. And I
Although
also
what
wanted
14-year-old's like, I think I have schizophrenia, ma.
yeah.
Like, okay, like that's because I was raised as a very like latchkey, mature
Yeah.
kid, and I'm over here like psychoanalyzing myself at 12. Yeah, but therapy.
Yeah, and I know, I just also want to address for like the audience, and I just know that there are, those that are definitely skeptical, about mediumship and things like that. I know typically we talk very science related. We talk, about parenting, things like that. But I do think that, as people, like there is like the science, like the behavior that's very observable. Like we can see this, like we can physically, like that's what ABA, like we can physically observe this behavior. This happened. But there's also like this whole side of us, like that's not ABA, outside of kind of the ABA, the science of it. That's just us as like a whole being, as like inside, like our private events. Like we can't see like what's going on in somebody's head.
We discussed
But we
that.
can kind of observe what happened.
We discuss that a lot in our work. So there are some psychic mediums out there who are never traditionally taught. I luckily found classes and got traditional teaching where you discuss physics and psychology and sociology and understand people. That way, when you're working with someone, you have a way of identifying like psychological behaviors in case it's outside of your realm of being able to deal with this. Like if I see someone who is in heavy grief, that they are using the work that I'm providing as a scapegoat to avoid healing and grief, then I've told many of clients, I will no longer work for you until I know that you have validation of seeing a therapist. And I've trained very heavily in the stages of grief with like death and dying work. I've done death doula classes where it's understanding like loss. And one of the things we discuss often is like, scientists don't believe in this work. And I'm like, they do believe in this work. They just don't know they believe in this work because psychology has already told us that some people who are in psychosis, that is spiritual psychosis, can only be healed by what their beliefs are. So if someone is having a sense that they are possessed, so to say, if they're truly in that psychosis, therapy would say get them an exorcism and help them break the psychosis and then put them through therapy. I'm not saying that I would diagnose this. I'm just saying that I've talked to therapists about that before. And they're like, so in our work, it must matter to the individual in some way. And if it works for them in their healing, then therefore it is a treatment. And I'm not saying that it should be taken lightly, and I'm not saying it should be considered medicine. I think it has its own place. But I've talked to a lot of scientists in the work. One of my favorite mediums is a astrophysicist, and she's studied in
Wow, that's
physics.
awesome.
I know, right? And so like she teaches
Cool.
physics, and she's a medium, and she's like string theory proves evidence of spiritual work. And she's like, a lot of physics does. And so science goes, well, the placebo works because it does, but nobody can explain why the placebo works. And
Right.
that right there, in my opinion, is where spirit and metaphysics, which is the spiritual sciences, step in. Because there is a part of us that is always intrinsically spiritual or looking for something. Even if you're atheist, you can believe in energy. That when the body dies, the cells, which are just made up of atoms that
Yeah,
are
and
connected by
energy is a
energy.
science too, like, energy is a science.
And so like, and we know that energy isn't created or destroyed. So when your cells and your energy goes somewhere, where does it go? It goes into the universe. And string theory says that you should be able to connect to those because all atoms are connected in the universe. And so all of this, like if I had more time to discuss it, that's what we discuss on a regular basis. Because I've also studied philosophy my whole life. So I try to tell people like I love skepticism and I love people who do not believe in the work that I do because I love anyone who will keep me grounded. But my mention to skeptics is always, "Hey, I respect you. I'm not here to change your mind or make you believe in what I do, but just know that if you ever want to experience it, I'm always here for you with an open mind and an open ear."
Yeah, and I think that's great too, that you're just kind of, like, willing to be challenged because I think that's an important piece too. And
As always.
I just think it's very like, personally myself, like, I have a friend who is a medium, and she, like, all of a sudden, like, she talks to people that are not there, and I'm and also the interesting part is that she also has limited vision.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes she thinks that they're there, and she also might, like, people used to think she was schizophrenic and things like that. But like some of the stuff that, and this is just my own personal experience, is just like, it's just like, wow, like where did,
Yeah.
for those who don't believe, I think if she would definitely put a good, she would definitely put up a good case, like, if you were a skeptic too. So, but I think it's very interesting, just the way it just kind of flows, like, with her. She's just like, "Oh, like, I'm just talking to, somebody who's visiting us right now," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, nice."
To bring
So
it
I
back
I
into
do. Yeah, go ahead.
to bring us back to behavior analysis, I think
Mhm,
this is a
yeah.
a great segue about people who are skeptics.
Mhm.
I was at a friend's house who was not necessarily a skeptic, but he didn't necessarily believe in this. I was like the first person he'd really ever like he knew a couple other people. He lived here in New Orleans, but he didn't really firmly
You're in
believe
New
in it.
Orleans? I didn't even know you were in New Orleans.
Yes. And
Oh my
so we became friends and I go to his house and I had done a couple readings for him. It was really funny because like we were at the gay bar one day and he was like, "Is there anyone around me?" And I was like, "Yeah, your uncle's right there." And he freaked out and he was like, "Sorry." I told him about him. I described the guy. He was like, "Oh my God, yeah." So we're at his house a couple weeks later, having dinner, and I sense the presence of a loved one. I off the clock, mind my business. Y'all can leave me alone, kind of thing. All of a sudden, we're just watching TV, and he just stops and looks at me and is like, "Sean, is someone here?" And I went, "Why?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just feel weird." And his entire behavior changed. And I was like, "Yeah." And he sensed it maybe 10 seconds after me. And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, it was like his grandmother or somebody who had passed. And he was like, I was like, "What did you feel? What happened? What changed in your behavior that made you say that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I just became very aware that I wasn't alone." And his entire demeanor, his behavior went from being someone who was comfortable to someone who was uncomfortable and felt like there was a trespasser in his house. You could see it. Like he became nervous. And I was like, "Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like there's somebody who just walked up in your space." And he was like, I don't like that." And I was like, "Well, okay." I was like, "Put the show back on." And so I tell people like we've seen, like if you watch people when we're working, you will see them react to the dead person walk in the room. And that's one thing that when you mentioned behavior analysis, I was like, we deal with this all the time. So that's why I was like, that's why I was very excited about this. 'Cause we can
Yeah,
see
yeah.
spiritual
I'm sure
activity
you
in
see, like,
behavior.
all kinds of different reactions, right? And, like,
Hmm.
different, like, I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
everybody has a different feeling, like, uncomfortable, and, like, I'm sure that there's a lot of different feelings for that, for sure.
Right. Well, kids are aware of what their parents watch. So they see their parents watch something where there's like a demon on the show and everything's scary. Their subconscious is going to tell them that like an unknown force in your room is scary. And that child is going to, if they sense that in their room, because children are very observant. Anybody who has children or been around children will know that they are extremely observant people. And so they will pick up every crumb.
They
And
are, that's why
so,
we have to be cautious of what we do around them.
exactly. And so that's why when I teach people who have kids, because I have people who come to me who are like, I have a kid, I would like to teach them how to be more open like your mother was. And so I did that with a friend of mine the other day. I said, well, we did a whole like little course on that. I was like, when your child comes to you and talks about feeling someone in her room, what does she say? Well, she says that she's playing with her friends. I said, okay. Does she express any nervousness like the way she does when a stranger comes to your house? None, not at all. I said, okay. So right now she feels safe with whatever it is she's experiencing. But you've experienced in her behavior that when someone she doesn't know comes over or makes her uncomfortable, she changes that behavior. She's like, yes. Okay, great. So when your daughter, if she ever experiences something negative in her room, look for that behavior. Don't create a negative out of her perfectly fine behavior where she feels like she's playing with someone safe. Because she's like, yeah, she said she was playing with my grandmother who's passed. And I was like, yeah, our loved ones watch over us when we're kids. And so she said something about how the daughter mentioned, who was like 4, mentioned something the grandmother had given their mom, the child's mom, my friend, as a kid. And it freaked her out. And I was like, why are you scared? Was it right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, then this must be your grandmother providing evidence that your daughter's safe. And she's like, well, yeah. I said, so if you react out of fear, your daughter will take your behavior, who you are the leader to her. She will take your behavior as learned behavior and be afraid of grandma. And she's like, okay. I said, so just let her know that if she gets scared, to let you know, just like if she were scared around someone. And that like behavior is so important in what we do. So important because it'll tell you immediately, especially if kids are seeing anything at all. And it'll let you know if they're picking up people's negative intentions or negative emotions.
Right.
Kids are really good at that.
Yeah, they definitely are. And sometimes, like, even if we whatever the emotion is that we might be feeling, the way that we respond to it can definitely, like, make or break. So and we all fall short of that sometimes, but it's really important that whatever the situation is, that we are responding, like, the way that we wanna see them respond. So it's like, "Oh, this is the way that I would like to see them respond, so this is the way that I should model that response."
Yes.
So another thing is too with applied behavior analysis, we believe that communication is a like a form of behavior. So everything we kind of do say, like that's all behavior. So how do you with the communication, like what does communication look like during these experiences? Because I always hear that too, like with mediums, it's like, they're communicating. And I think that, some people I've talked to, they're like, I see like symbols, like they're showing me something
Mhm.
or like they hear something. So what does that look like for you? What does that communication look like for you?
For me, it's a lot of emotion. It's sort of like, if you've ever, like, pack bonded with a character on TV where all of a sudden you feel overly emotional for something that has never happened to you.
Yes.
I'll be very overwhelmed by that person's experiences. I get a lot of health issues. So, like, for me, if I know someone if someone has had a heart attack, I will feel the heart attack, like, personally, like, my chest will start hurting. I've had I hope this isn't too much for your podcast. I had a
Just go for
guy
it.
come through early in the day, so I had client later that day, and earlier in the day, I started getting severely constipated and severe stomach pain. And I was like, "I'm gonna have to cancel this session. I can't do this. Oh my god, I don't know what I ate." And I was like, "No, we're gonna push through," because I hate rescheduling people. And so I call the client, and I'm in agony. Like, I've never had constipation this bad in my life. Grandfather comes through, and all of a sudden I get my signs for cancer and I get my signs for getting chemotherapy, which is this feeling of like hot flashes and um, the word treatment. And so I was like, "Oh, he had cancer." And they're like, "Yeah." I went, "He had colon cancer." And they're like, "Yes." And I was like, "No, no. Did he not shit for like 3 weeks before he died?" And they're like, "To the day, like almost exactly 3 weeks." Like, we were having to like get him impactions. And I was like, "You made me constipated." And so, like, I get that stuff, which isn't always fun. And as soon as the reading was done, I thought I couldn't make it. I didn't think I was gonna make it to the toilet. Ha ha ha! That's meant to be funny. So I get a lot of the feelings, and we call that clairsentience, which is just clear feeling, clear understanding. And I get a lot of them talking to me, a lot of telling me stories about what they've been through. And then I get some visuals, but it's usually to fill in the gaps. I'm much more clairaudient, which is hearing things. And when I have them communicate to me, it is behavior. It is letting me know who they were when they were alive, things that they went through. Because after we die, we don't have an ego. We don't have fear. We don't have want or need. Everything is fine in spirit. So there's nothing that we are surviving in spirit. So there's nothing to be callous or mean or cruel for. So they're communicating what they did were in life. And that's where a lot of people who don't know what they're doing misunderstand where, oh, I get this person is abusive and they're angry in spirit. They're not. They're expressing who they were in life. And so I see them behaving like this. And I see them acting and expressing, hatred or love and all these things. And I see this person in my head like a movie. And I feel like I've stepped into the first person of this person. And then as I communicate that to my client, it is the whole point of mediumship, which is to relay the experience of this person that they had and give them the reminder that just because they've passed doesn't mean they're gone, that their energy exists somewhere in the world, in the universe. And so behavior is so beautiful because once I've expressed who they were when they were alive, their whole demeanor changes. They change from being someone who was trapped or angry or harsh or even like, particular. Maybe someone was a clean freak. They stop expressing that to me. And all of a sudden there's this, I'm well. And I can feel the shoulders drop. I can feel the jaw unclench. I can feel this sense of just perfect peace. And so when you work through that and then you're working with your client, I can see that in my client too, because I always know exactly what my client is struggling with. And it's usually either I am worried that they're not okay or I'm worried they suffered pain. And my loved ones in spirit always express how they died because they want their loved one to know they weren't in any pain or that they was perfectly okay. And then they always express that things in spirit are fine, they're okay. And then and so like communication, the thing I love communicating most from them is apologies, is remember this conversation we had before I died? And my client's always insane, like, I can't believe you mentioned this conversation we had in private. Like, how did you know this? And I'm like, haha, dead person. And so, like, it's that's where the communication breaks down. And that's where you have to be very aware of. I'm dealing with a man who is a father, and you become aware of, okay, that's why I feel this because dad seems to act like this, and he's very okay, and there's this. And you start piecing together like a puzzle, a person. And it is the most fascinating thing. I do think that learning behavior and psychological understanding and sociological understanding is very important for mediums and psychics because we have to understand who people are to
Right.
meet them both as deceased people and living people. And so it's such a fascinating thing to see and having them tell me their stories and getting to relay them to their loved ones and to the world.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing is that there's kind of sometimes that last piece of the communication that didn't get through. It's like, that I didn't get to say I'm sorry, which I know a lot of people that have gone through that is they're like, I didn't get to say I'm sorry or do they forgive me or something to that nature. And so what a beautiful thing it is to be able to kind of relay that message. I think that that's really beautiful for people to do that. So that's
I
really
love it.
interesting. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I've worked with so many people who struggle with getting past grief. My client today was one of them. Like, I feel like people get stuck in like this anger and bargaining phase in grief. And I feel like therapy, I've almost all my loved ones in my life are dead. And so like I probably have a Rolodex of grief therapists. And so like I've done a lot of the work personally
Okay.
too.
So you've also had your share of
Oh
grief too,
yeah.
which makes it so
Good
relatable
Lord.
too. Really
First time I
great.
went to a therapist, I was 5 years old. My mom was like, we're gonna make sure you're not screwed up. And so my mom was a firm believer in therapy. So that's why I was like,
Yeah, no,
psychoanalyzing myself so young.
therapy's a good thing. Even therapists have therapists, so, yeah.
A lot of my clients are therapists, oddly enough, and they're like, "I love coming to you. You give me such a different perspective." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." I feel like I'm
That's
giving
awesome.
back to people who help me not, do horrible things. And so I think there is a linchpin in healing, which is therapy and psychology deal with the known. We know that these are psychological effects and they affect the emotions, and that medication can do this and yada yada. And I believe in all of that. I believe in the science of the mind and the soul. But I also believe that there is a linchpin that can help people, which is the spiritual world, which is I can't therapize away that I didn't say this to my loved one or didn't hear this last thing from my loved one. You can't, in my opinion, therapize away regret sometimes. And you can't therapize away memories because they're all there. And I'm not saying therapy doesn't help. I just think that sometimes where what people get stuck on is the I need to do this act to feel better. And even if this is a sugar pill, if even if it is just the sugar pill effect, it's helpful. And so, but my thing is that it's important to bring through evidence. It's why you've seen me work on my lives. I'm very particular about like, does this make sense? Just yes or no. Don't tell me nothing. I want to know from you. I want to know from them. They're the ones dead. They ain't got bills to pay. Let's do this. So when I'm working with clients, it has to come from the dead. It has to come from the people in spirit. And it has to be information that I can't look up. And then so those private conversations that you can't look up on Google. All mediums who are doing this professionally should be getting information like that, that validates this work. And then that so solidifies in the client that when they say their goodbye, when they say their I'm sorry, when they say please forgive me, when they say I love you, for them, they now believe that they're saying that to that loved one. Because how else could the medium have known these things?
Right.
And that right there for me is where the behavior of healing changes, where they're going from a place of being in grief to grieving and healing.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of just like I felt like if only I could hear this, if only I could hear they could hear me say this. So I think that that gap of communication is kind of what they're seeking because
Yes.
I've heard this like and I maybe I saw it like too on who knows, like some kind of social media or whatever. But that grief is loved, but just no place to go. So you still like love your loved one. You just don't have a way, like you can't call them on the phone and say, like, which
Yes.
was a behavior. So now you have to figure out this whole new you, this whole new life without this person that,
Yes.
was connected to you. So now you're like, I can't call them on the phone and say, I'm sorry. You can't call them on the phone and say, I love you, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that to have somebody, there's definitely that want, that need to like be able to bridge the gap between life and death. Like that just, I think that is a very natural response for those who believe or don't believe. But that's like, I think what they, everybody thinks. Like, I can't tell you how many times, you know, somebody lost loved one. They're like, if only I could tell them, one more time, or if only I could do this one more time. So, I think that it's a very, very awesome, and I'm just a believer in that gift, and, I know not everybody is, but I think that it's a very beautiful thing to be able to connect those people for those last words, and I think that is very healing to be able to hear that. Even if they're not directly hearing it from them, the fact that there's in between, the medium, to be able to connect those 2. So I think it's really awesome. So if you're in different environments, like, do you find kind of depending on your different environment, are you kind of picking up, like, different spirits, like, based on where you are? Like, it sounds like you can just be around somebody and then their loved one is there with them, but if you go somewhere, like, if you go to, and plus you're in New Orleans,
Yeah.
but if you go downtown or you go to a gravesite or, like, you go somewhere, do you pick up on those energies differently than when you are just shopping at the grocery store? Or is it just all the time,
Yeah.
anywhere, it's all the same? Like, what are kind of the differences?
I mean, I hope I'm expressing the connection between applied behavior analysis and the work that I do, because this is another area where behavior changes the work.
Yeah,
Um,
the environment.
if I'm yeah, if I'm on my day off and you bother me, we're gonna have a fight. We're gonna have an argument. So, like
Yeah,
today, if I have to reschedule a client because I'm sick, I do have chronic illness. I will usually reschedule them to days off. Well, the spirit world knows that if they bother me on days off, they're probably gonna get told off. And so today, it took me a good couple minutes to get the loved one to come through because they were afraid they were gonna get told, because in my head, they're like, "But it's Thursday." And I'm like, "I know, but it's okay." And they're like, "We get yelled at on Thursdays." And I'm just cackling because I wasn't expecting it, because I haven't scheduled somebody on Thursday in ages. And so I was trying to bring her through her loved one. And so I told her that he was doing this, and she started laughing. She's like, "Oh my God. She's like, "I chewed him out about something one time, and he refused to ever do it again for afraid he was going to get chewed out." So it's like it played into his behavior. But when I go to the store, I'm running errands, much like if as a professional, if you were off the clock and you were running personal errands, how would you feel if one of your patients showed up and started trying to like get
listen,
free session or free therapy right in the
listen.
middle of the aisle, right? You're sitting there all like squeegee bunned up and you're like in your hobo clothes. Like, how would you feel? Like, and it's the same behavior. It's the exact same behavior. Only difference is if you talk to yours, people don't look at you like you're crazy. So I you will notice like it, and my friends notice it all the time. They're like, when you're out running errands, you are very like stone cold. Like you do not like you don't talk to people, you're very like rigid. And I'm like, I'm not here to socialize. I'm here to get stuff and get out. And so they'll notice that my persona, my behavior is very rigid. And then if I see someone I do know in a real person, I chime in a little bit, but then I'm like, I have things to do because I don't want to get curious. I don't want to get open. When I'm at the bar, when I'm doing things that are fun, that's when things get a little hairy because I'm in a great mood. I'm socializing, maybe having a drink or two. And so my behavior becomes a lot more loose. So it's why when we were at the bar, he asked, I've already had a couple drinks, and I was like, yeah, there's one right there. And I was like, shit. I was like, so I will say, and this is something that has been a huge part of my work. I don't drink more than 2 drinks, no matter what they are, wherever I go. If it's 2 Angry Orchards, I don't drink beer. So if it's like a apple cider or whatever, I don't drink more than 2. I never really fully relax wherever I am. I never really fully like I've gone got a massage once and I fully relaxed because I'm not talking. So it's no big deal. But like you kind of are always a little on all the time. You definitely set boundaries with them and they respect it, but we're all kids in this world a little bit. You know, we all get a little curious from time to time. We all get a little like, well, I want to taste that candy. And so you can't help it like, when you're, what was an example that happened the other day? Where did we go? We were having dinner Yeah, I would have dinner with a friend, and someone who was in a booth not too far away, and I heard them crying, and my immediate like, I am nobody's mama. That's why they go by auntie. But I get very compassionate. I'm sorry. I get very compassionate about people and like them being okay. And so if I hear somebody crying, my little alarm goes off because I'm afraid they're in danger. And so immediately, like heard that and I tuned in and I immediately went into, is anything wrong? Do I need to be aware of anything? And I was like, that is none of your business. I was like, what are you doing? Go back to eating your sushi. So yeah, your behavior becomes very important of like how you address the spirit world in every situation and the intuitive world because it's there. We're energy living in an energetic world. You're in the swimming pool. And so you can't just be like, oh, well, there's no water anywhere. No, it's
Right.
everywhere. And so
Right.
you have to be the one who chooses not to inhale it. So I'm
Yeah.
always a little, yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense too. It sounds like you can kind of like what we would say maybe like planned ignore. Sounds like you can kind of
Yes.
ignore them and be like, I'm not talking right now and put them on extinction.
Yes, absolutely. They absolutely know that like when all the lights get turned off and I'm in my room playing a video game, if y'all bother me, y'all are going to get put on timeout. Like we're going to fight. Like I will never talk to your loved one ever. Have a good day.
I would just say too, like it probably just like I have to, or anybody for any kind of job, right? It has to be like, okay, like at some point without getting, so you're not reaching burnout, is to be like, okay, this is me time. And this is the
Mhm.
time that, you can't have like your brain going on
Yes,
24/7. So you
correct.
have to take breaks. So that's good. I'm glad that they respect your boundaries for the most
They
part.
do.
So that's
You mentioned graveyards, places. For me, I want to behavior. I find it easier because I started reading practicing in bars. So I find it very easy to read in very high chaos places. Like I'll be in the French Quarter and it's like there's white noise everywhere and I'm super at peace. But I can always tell when there's spirits around in the French Quarter because it is like split pea soup out there. When I go to a graveyard, quiet as can be, quiet as can be. Because in the TV show Ghost Whisperer, this is the only time I will reference this show because everything else in that show was ridiculous. But it was a good show.
I
It was
also
not
love that
accurate.
show and I also think it's
It was a
ridiculous.
great show. It was a great show. I love Jennifer Love Hewitt. I love her to death.
No, I think it's funny.
But the accuracy of the way she worked was pretty not accurate. But one thing she says in the show is places are not haunted, people are, and that is 100% the truth. People
Well,
are
that's interesting.
haunted by their loved ones because their loved ones love you. They love you. They're going to be with you. They're not going to sit around in some empty graveyard. Like, excuse me, no. So I tell people, do you hang around the salon where you got your hair cut off? Nope. It's just off cast. It's just your body. Your loved ones follow you. And so when I cannot tell you how many times I go to a graveyard when I need peace, peace and quiet.
So I know, like, okay, so my closest place where I live, because I live in Florida, is St. Augustine, which is just north of me. And because
Mhm.
it's the nation's oldest city. Um,
Oh,
and I'm like, and they always tell, like, I've gone on the ghost tour. I love ghost
no,
stories
it's
so
fun.
much. I love it. And it's so much fun. Yeah. And then they have one where they do like the pub crawl and it's like I have a good time. And I'm like, I heard these stories. So sometimes I just copy after the tour guide and they don't like that, but that's okay. So, whatever, I don't mean to be a know-it-all, just, but just sometimes I remember the story.
You can't help being smart.
I get excited, but I just feel that maybe like those certain places because there's so much like there was so much
Mhm.
death and so much history
Yep.
that sometimes, and this is like way off kilter of like behavioral science, but that sometimes maybe that energy kind of like lingers because the story keeps getting repeated. And I'm like, if the story keeps
Yeah.
repeating, because as soon as you stop saying the story, then I'm kind of like, that it's just like a place. But if the story keeps going, I'm wondering if you're kind of bringing the spirits there because you keep telling the stories, like,
Hauntings. We have to get through this really quickly because I know it's not behavioral.
yeah.
Well, I guess
No,
it
it's
kind
okay.
of
We
is.
can just talk. It's fine.
I can make it behavioral. One way to tell the difference between a residual haunting and an intellectual haunting is behavior. So, in a residual haunting, it's going to act like a record. It's going to have the exact same thing over and over and over again. So we see this in places like Gettysburg. We see this in places like New Orleans, during
Right. So,
where
yeah,
there were severe
historic.
traumas. So we will see these, and so at St. Augustine, where they have these ghost tours, a lot of the experiences there are from residual hauntings. because we know that energy can get trapped by different things. We know that quartzes are used as memory cards. They store energy. There is something called piezoelectricity, where if you squeeze quartz enough, it creates electricity. So, like, we know that stones, I know, right? It's like I've studied this. And so it's like this is my obsession is to educate about spiritual stuff. Um, so, all right. So in these places where there is hauntings, I'm using that for a reason. This is a record that is playing on the same song over and over and over again, the same footprints in the same area at the same time. This is not intelligent. This is energy that has gotten stuck, albeit a haunting, because it is energy of an experience of a time that happened in that place. An intellectual haunting, which is, I would not call a haunting, is your loved ones visiting you. You're going to see behavior. You're going to have the child who says, I see grandma talked about, and she talked about you having a dress as a child. You're going to have them provide a behavior of who they were when they were alive in acknowledgement of them being dead and you being alive. So residual has no idea that you're there. There is no behavior. It is a repetition of pattern, and it is just energy being stuck in that pattern. Intelligent hauntings are souls that are being made aware to you because they want to let you know that they're there. That is behavior. And they're going to act the way they probably would have when they were alive. For instance, my mother, when she died, it was maybe like 6 months after, and we lived together at the time. And so I'm in the living room, my dad's in his room, and all of a sudden I can hear the oven turn on, like the click, 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 and then the oven turns on because we had old stove, not digital. And so all of a sudden, the kitchen starts getting warm within a minute, and I can smell bread. And my dad comes in going, "Are you cooking something?" And
Oh,
he's
so your
like,
dad
"Are you?"
smelled it
Yep.
too? That's so
And
cool.
he's like, "Are you cooking something?" And I went, "No, it's okay." And I went in there, and the oven was not on. And
Wow.
so it was, I checked it, the knob had not turned, nothing, there was no gas. After a minute, it went away. So that is her behavior. She used to bake all the time. And one of the things her and I had talked about is please bring through the smell of bread. And the fact that I smelled it would not be considered evidence to a medium. My dad coming in and smelling it would be considered as evidence because in evidential mediumship, more than one person has to experience the phenomenon. And so he coming in and mentioned it, I thought, I was like, okay, it's my mom's, whatever. When he came in and mentioned it, I acknowledged it. And that's behavior of a loved one in spirit. It's why behavior is very important to mediums.
That I think the way that you explained that made so much sense as far as, like, the I'm saying it wrong.
Residual.
Residual hauntings, right? Because those are the kind that I'm like, read in like the Florida haunts, or like whatever, like the stories, that are very neat, by the way. I love ghost
Mhm.
stories. I think they're
Me too.
very interesting. I love true crime. I love all of that stuff. Like, and I think most people are fascinated about death and like life after death and like hauntings and things like that because they're very interesting stories. First of all, even if you don't believe any of it, it's still a very interesting story. But I think that's interesting the way that you describe that is it's just kind of like almost like a residue. Like this is just kind of just happening and it's just there and it's not the same as like intelligent. Like not like so I think that's very interesting.
The more energy that happens in a place, the more residual stuff will get kicked up like dust. So them continuing to have the tours, them constantly giving energy to it is what keeps those hauntings alive.
Keeps them alive. Yeah. Yeah. Which is I mean, that's really neat,
Yeah. It's
but
like
it's not
having a living history book.
yeah, it is like a living history book. They're very fun. I highly recommend ghost stories if you ever, have a good time. Like I think they're a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.
So I think that what you said as far as the environment, it sounds like they kind of just are always around you, like spirits are just around you in general. Do
Yeah.
you find that there's anything that kind of increases that? Like, I know you said something about chaos and, like, going to bars, like, so what kind of increases that? Like, I get call it like an activity? Like what would increase that?
So paranormal activity, not to be referencing the movie. So there's no TM here. We're talking about the not activity can become more active in households with a lot of volatile emotions. We will see this where someone is being abused, especially a child. We'll see both types of hauntings happen. And there's this kind of where we get into what we call poltergeist. Poltergeist energy is broken record energy that has been fed so much that it becomes semi-sentient and it becomes sort of like a, that slime mold, that yellow slime mold that it's weird. It's technically brainless, but it's always looking for food. It becomes this mold that's just looking for food. We see this in houses where the behavior in the house is very abusive. It sort of feeds that activity. And I call it sort of like the anger, the abuse is in an echo chamber. And it's just getting louder and louder and louder and becoming where we know sound can become physical if there's enough vibration of it. It's sort of
Right.
like the sound of this hatred and this behavior has become physical and it starts doing things. And so we also see this on a completely opposite spectrum where we have houses where there is a lot of love, a lot of like compassion, a lot of like support. Those people will have like miraculous things happen. Like they'll have like somebody who was sick who probably should not have gotten better, got better. And I'm not saying that they were cured. I'm not saying that this was like some sort of miraculous spiritual, like, ooh, woo, woo, God thing. I'm not trying to like make light of it. But we'll see this where the echo chamber is an echo chamber of love. And I don't remember the name of the scientist who did it with plants and rice and water, where the more love you gave the plant, the bigger it got faster. And the
Right.
more hatred you gave a plant, it started dying. And he's like, we can see through this that certain actions and certain intentions do influence the world around us. So we see like paranormal activity, but it tends to be loved ones in houses where there's love and support and compassion. Spirits of the people who've passed will like come to the kids and stuff like that, right? Or like make themselves, you'll see them in the house somewhere. You'll have like their smell or you get signs from them. And in this abusive household, you'll have the opposite. You'll have negative energy and negative hauntings happen again. And we see this where it's like if you want we do house cleansing to kind of help people like heal and whatnot. And I'm like, the first thing you need to do is like cut this bullshit out. So we see this behavior in places. So take the medium and we bring people into these different environments. The sessions go very different depending on where we are. And I read for a friend and the French Quarter, and it was better example. You see me on my lives. The information I get on my lives is not all that personal. It's not a lot of when you were holding my hand on the bedside and we were having this conversation. It tends to be things like, remember when we went sailing? Remember when we, it's very uplifting, but not overly private. When I'm doing things in private with a one-on-one session in a very safe space, one, the client is already more relaxed because they're not on the spot on a camera or whatnot, or in front of other people. That's when I get things like, tell her I used to smack her on the ass when we were married, I was alive. Because the husband wants to be like, I loved her. My wife was gorgeous. I want to let him remind of that. And she's like, oh my God, he did that. The things I get are so much more deep. Like they're so much more private and personal. And that's why you'll see me all the time in my lives be like, I can't tell you how does not equate what you would get on a private phone call. And it's fine, but like I'll get things of where like, hey, you understand that you and your family are fighting because so and so took the money after they died. Yes. They don't want to air that on national freaking news. So like when we're in different locations, spirits will give us different information. Just like if we were alive, you wouldn't want to talk about those things in public. And that's what's so fascinating is that even after death, behavior stays the same.
Yeah. No, I think that's very, very interesting. And I think just like when you were talking about like the plants and the growth and that experiment too, is like that's just like people like we want to fill them like with that positive reinforcement, right? Like we want to fill them
Yes.
with that social praise. Like we want to be able to fill them up with that because that's usually how we see an increase in behavior, right? So like the more positive reinforcement, like the more we like see an increase in like a behavior we see more of. So I'm glad that kind of works for the spiritual world as well.
It
So
does. It
the more
really
love
do.
and I think that's a really nice thing that if but it's how sad is that? I was just thinking what you were saying as far as like the abusive households, like kids that are abused, that they just get more negativity and the spiritual side too. That's really sad. On top of I
And I
do
think that's where the work comes in. We can go in and we can not to be all woo woo, but like, we can go in and clear that. I've done a number of house cleansings where the family uh abusive partner died. They're like, we still feel like the house is very heavy. I said, we can fix that. Let's fix it. And I'll go into the house and I'll be like, well, I said, it's super easy. I'm going to go through, I'm going to do cleansings with like cedar or whatever I use, frankincense usually. And then I will pray. I don't pray. It's nothing denominational of any kind, but it's just, I just pray to make them happy. And I just start to feel all the love that my mom had for me, all the love my grandparents had for me, all the love that my aunts have had for me. And then I have them like talk to me about things that you've done in this house that made you happy. Talk to me about this. I'll tell jokes. I'll start making them laugh. And then I will usually have whoever the parent is, or if everyone's over the age of 18, anyone under the age of 18, I'll usually ask the parent to have them go somewhere else, like to like a family member's house or a friend's house, just because I don't want them overwhelmed by things. Honestly, like their children. If they're 16 and up, I'm not too bad about that. If like they're 13,
right,
14, I'm not too bad about that. But usually under like preteens and down, I don't want them in the house. With no disrespect, it's just like I don't really like to involve kids who are so very like behaviorally influenced in
right,
anything
right.
that's
Yeah, they are.
either way. And so I'm like, teens and up are usually aware, just like, hey, look, we're gonna do this. If you don't believe in it, it's fine. But I don't want to sway kids either way, whether they believe in this or not. Like that's up to them to grow up to do on their own. But also, like the energy is very emotional. Like it can that emotional swing from negative to happy can still be a lot volatile, very volatile for a child. And so I'll usually have the adult be like, okay, this is your home, take ownership of it. How do you want your house to feel? This is this, okay. And
Mhm.
then I remind them that like this is your home now. Your dead level is gone. Be happy, laugh, be like, haha, you were abusive. Goodbye. Like, and I give them that permission
Goodbye.
to let that go. Like I do that to my dad all the time. I'm like, you son of a bitch. I hated you. I love you though, but I hated you. Like I let them make the abuse a bit of a joke and kind of like own that it happened. Like we don't want to like downplay that it happened, but
Right.
like they're gone. This is your house. You can change the direction of that flow. And then we start laughing and then singing or whatever. And then we're basically sort of like paint stripping that energy off the walls and getting it to neutral and then building it back up. And then I tell them like after this, I'm like, bring your kids over, have a family night, watch movies, do something silly. Remind yourselves that this is your house and this is your house to live in. And they're like, oh my God, thank you. And so like that's something that I'm glad you mentioned. Like, yeah, it is hard for kids to go through that, but it's something that can absolutely be healed. Whether the person is dead, whether the abusive person has been kicked out, whether you've left and moved into a new place and you don't know how to get your own energy feeling better. That is one thing that like absolutely go to therapy, absolutely see a behavioral therapist, absolutely do the work psychologically and scientifically. But if you would like to have that energetic and spiritual help, um, absolutely ask someone in to come in and aid with that. If they make you feel weird, trust that your behavior is telling you they make me feel weird. I don't like them. Then don't have them come in your house. Find another spiritual woo woo person.
Yeah.
We're out there.
Another
We out there.
So, and I work with a lot of individuals, like, I mean, primarily autism, but other varying disabilities. Have you had experience either, kind of on the other side or living that, with those kind of disabilities? And like, what are some of the differences? Like, what do you, like, I guess it is very like energetic and like the
Oh
way
my
that you
God.
feel and the way that you experience that. What has that been like for you?
I cannot thank you enough for bringing up autistic people because let me tell you something right now. I would rather spend my entire day with someone who's autistic than somebody who's neurotypical.
Listen, I love people. I myself, I have ADHD, which is
Yeah,
how
same.
I my life, and I think many adults are undiagnosed. I I love like some of my
Yes.
favorite people have that diagnosis, and I think they're great.
So energetically and spiritual. So I also would like to clarify when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious and I don't mean
Mhm,
like spiritual belief system. I mean energetically and I mean like metaphysically.
mhm.
So spiritually, when I've worked with autistic people, love them. I'm gonna say something here that's gonna sound very egotistical, and I mean that wholeheartedly because I do believe this. As a psychic medium who is very ADHD, I feel like one of the things that makes me a really great psychic medium because ADHD allows your brain to process information faster. And I
Too fast
receive,
sometimes, but yes.
huh?
Too fast sometimes, but yes.
Oh, no, 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 I agree. But it does allow us to process energy faster, um, and from in multiple streams.
Mhm.
I think it's what makes me such a great psychic medium is my neurodivergency because I do not think that I would be able to process all that I process so quickly. And I've had other like neurodivergent mediums that I've worked with where I'm like boom, 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 boom. I'm having a conversation with this loved one, and they're like, I don't know how you make that connection so fast. And I'm like, I get hit by a truck, and then I just accept it. And they're like, okay. I'll have multiple people in my head, like I'm an operator on a switchboard. And they're like, "How do you deal with that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? This is a Tuesday for me." And they're like, "What?" Because
My gosh, I love it.
I used to work as a cardiac tech where I had like 50 monitors I had to monitor at all time. And so they're like, I'd have 50 monitors, I'd have my phone playing something, music or watching a show, and I would be doing filing charts and doing charting and stuff. And I ain't never lost a patient. And my coworkers are like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, if I turned off any of this and just focused on my patients, somebody would die. I was like, so like, I need all of this. So when I talk to dead people and I have them giving me all this information, it's very helpful. But when I work with someone who's autistic, I feel like I'm talking to an equal because I don't have to slow down. I don't have to slow down the energy that I'm getting. I don't have to overly explain things because there's something about the people who are autistic that I work with. They're always already there. Like, it's like they make me look like I'm slow. And I love that. I'm like, finally, I'm with someone who understands. And so, like, I will do readings for clients who have autistic children. And I have to remind them, I'm like, you're talking to someone who knows you more than you know you. And they're like, what do you mean? It's mostly mom. That's why I keep saying she. Um, because God knows men don't get nearly enough work that they should. Uh,
Yes.
no offense to the men out there. I'm so sorry. Trigger warning. But I'll talk to these moms and I'll say, you understand that when you start having a bad day, like you'll be getting really stressed about something, all of a sudden your child starts freaking out a little bit. They start getting triggered out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you didn't even say anything. She's like, no. I said, because they can sense you. And then I go back to how when we were hunters and gatherers, moms would have their child strapped to their back or following them into the woods to gather herbs or food or whatever. And the mom had to be able to get her child or children to shut the hell up at an instant. So the kids were really taught to pay attention to their mother's behavior. And he became a very psycho spiritual link with the mother. And so, like, I will see this with moms and neurodivergent kids. I'm not saying it happens 24/7. Nothing is all the time, obviously. But I'll see this so much with neurodivergent children and their parents where they will tend to react more off the parent than like their own situation. And so that's one thing I notice with when I'm working with clients who have children. When I'm working with autistic people as readings, there is the reading is overwhelming almost because I feel like I have to provide more information to them than I would someone who's neurodivergent. And it's very interesting to feel someone who's autistic because I don't have to over explain though. So I do get more information, but I can express it more through intention than verbiage. Whereas with someone who is not neurodivergent, I have to articulate what I'm saying. I have to explain it, which is exhausting. And so when I'm working with someone who's autistic, there is this like, okay, so you know this feeling? Yeah. Oh, I totally get it. Like the that becomes more easily communicated. The more important thing that I want to talk about is people who are autistic or neurodivergent in spirit. People who are downs come through as downs. People who are autistic come through as autistic. They don't relate to these things as disabilities. Not that they think there's anything wrong with calling it that, because in life it does act as a disability.
Hmm.
In spirit, they express to me that, and this is what me and other mediums have gotten. Like me and other mediums have like talked about, like, I've gotten this, and we've never spoken before. And they're like, oh my God, spirits have told me the same thing. So this is where we start kind of like going, okay, this must be some sort of evidence that we get from spirit. People who are artistic in spirit come through acting and expressing and with the behavior of a perfectly, and I mean this with no disrespect, normal person. Their words, not mine. Because when they are in spirit, they are capable of keeping up with the amount of energy that they feel so highly.
Right.
So for them, it's
Y-
nothing.
Yeah.
In life, they express that something in their brain is turned on that allows the flow of energy to be higher than what their processing speed is. And so it starts to fry, I mean this with no disrespect, it starts to kind of fry their brain, which makes them unable to communicate, unable to exist mentally the way someone who is not divergent would, because they're getting more electrical output to their brain. So it's always kind of this constant overload. So there's no ability to filter it to the areas of the brain that allow you to articulate it and allow you to express it consciously. And so they end up being, from varying degrees of being very nonverbal, non communicative, and just a body language. They may have a toy that makes them feel safe. And all of a sudden they grab that because they feel unsafe and uncomfortable. Those kind of behaviors. But in their head, they're experiencing all of these things that you would probably have a seizure or a stroke experiencing. And so when I'm reading for someone who has passed that was autistic, I tell my client, and it always makes me a little emotional. I tell my client, imagine who your child would be if they were as brilliant and as amazing as they are as autistic built people, but able to articulate that and able to talk to you like there was no
Amazing.
disability. That's who they are in spirit. They are that the road runner against the coyote. They're just going a million miles an hour and they can handle it and they can articulate. One of the difficult things that I have as a medium, there's not a whole lot of memory making there. There may not be as many fun memories for the parent as there would be with a non-autistic child. I
The
mean,
parent
across,
there's definitely different challenges that come with that.
yeah.
Like, the
So
parenting style looks different. I mean, maybe they're not going to
exactly.
this, like, maybe they're not going to, like you said, like, get ice cream or doing those kind of memory things that, like, a lot of parents
Yes.
like to do with their children because of the medical needs or because of the behavioral outbursts that happen in
Yes.
public, things like that, or they're not verbal.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
of course.
It can be difficult to validate information from the loved one who's autistic in spirit that it was them. So what we start doing is going, okay, give me things that your parent experienced with you, not things that you experienced, but things that your parent experienced with you. And they will talk about their parents saying, I know my mom had a hard time with the fact that under no circumstances whatsoever would I eat fried chicken, but I would absolutely eat chicken tenders. And they'll give me these things that are much more specific memories than you would get with a plethora of memories with someone who was more neurodivergent. And that can be difficult because the more specifically precise that we have to be as mediums, it can be hard because we don't have many other puzzle pieces to help us make the whole picture. So that can be a little difficult. So we always have to find ways. So a lot of times it'll be like, do you understand that when he was scared, he would grab specifically your left leg? Yeah, because he only wanted to be on my left. That's validation. Do you understand that when that he had really bad times with thunderstorms because he hated the sound on the roof? Yes. So like we start having to kind of step into their autistic experience, which is fine. It can be a little exhausting on our end because we get a little brain fried from that. everybody I've ever talked to has worked with autistics in spirit, you walk away a little like this sense of like lack of clarity. Same
Yeah.
way I feel when I deal with who had Alzheimer's. It's just on the opposite spectrum. I feel like I took on too much versus I feel like I have a trouble remembering things.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting what you're saying as far as the articulation on the other side, because what I find with a lot of individuals, because they don't necessarily have to be children, but
Yeah.
especially for those that are non-verbal, is like when I'm trying to, like we're working on like teaching them new skills and things like that, they know more and they can kind of demonstrate more
Mhm.
before ever outputting, like before ever saying like, I know this, or like they know the color, they know the numbers, or like, just for example, like numbers and because a lot of people, a lot of kids and a lot of people with autism do like really love like shapes, letters, numbers, and kind of
They're
thing.
so smart.
Um,
It's like that.
they know so much before they can actually express what it is that they know. So
Yep.
it's kind of
My
just like
nephew
out.
my nephew has Asperger's, and he didn't start talking until he was 5. And the first sentence, and he was over at our house. My mom was babysitting him, and his older brother passed gas and goes, "Haha, I farted." And Seth comes walking out of my mom's room, goes, "It's not fart, it's flatulence." And all of us were like, "What the what?" And he's like, he's like, "Gran doesn't like fart. It's flatulence." And my mom was like, "That had to be the first sentence you ever say? What?" And it was
That's
true because my mom would always correct Christian about saying fart. And so Seth adored my mother, my youngest nephew, and he adored her. And he was always like standing up for her. And I'm like, this 5-year-old autistic kid is doing this thing that someone 3 times his age would do. And I was like, we called my brother. I was like, "You gonna have your hands full." It's because he was so much more advanced than everybody else. Like they moved to North Dakota for a while, and the schools there were far better than we have here in Louisiana, of course. And he was in the 3rd grade reading level, and they had to move him up to a 6th grade reading level because he was bored. And he was still not being as challenged as he would have liked in the 6th grade reading level, but he refused to skip grades because he felt that would be, and I say this, he said this verbatim. Because he goes to they moved to North Dakota, and they're like, "We think it would be best if we just move him to 6th grade entirely." And he goes, "I think it would be detrimental to my social development if I skip grades." And I was like, "You know what, kid? I really love you. You're special. I hope you
he's
never forget
great.
that. You are
I'm like,
special. And if anyone ever makes you feel badly about being so special, I will find them and I will hurt them." Because like that's like I've never met someone, and I mean this with love, I never met somebody who was autistic who wasn't nice as hell.
yeah.
And I'm like,
I love sometimes the no filter, like, it's
yes,
refreshing. Sometimes I'm just like, "Oh, okay." Like,
be honest. You're fine. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. It's a different of opinions. It's
feel
fine.
it.
But yeah, so that comes through very easy, and we do give them. And I just like to articulate they're okay. They're not healed of their autism. They're just now capable of handling it. And I think that's what's beautiful is because I can't stand when I see people say they're healed now as
Right.
if there was something wrong with them when they were alive. There's nothing wrong with your kids. There's nothing wrong with people who are autistic or neurodivergent. The energy they're handling, their brain's just struggling with, and there's nothing wrong with that.
It's just like a learning, like, it is, obviously like a spectrum, but just kind of learning how to manage all of that. Because I know it's a little different with ADHD, obviously, than autism, but I know, for just speaking for myself, it's something I had to really struggle with as a kid, that I really had to grow into being able to
Mhm.
manage. And I cut people off in mid-sentence. I don't always get, like, I totally missed a lot of social cues, like, and I talk
Yeah.
really fast, and I do a lot of things, and I have all my tabs open on my computer, and all my cabinets are open, but I'm also very creative, and I'm very ambitious, so I think
Yeah.
that it's a gift, and it's just knowing how to manage, and I that's a lot of, you know, in my field, is just knowing, like, teaching skills. It's like, okay, so here's a like maybe a difficult behavior, like maybe you're struggling with communication. So like here's some skills to get you there. And it's not necessarily because I've had parents before say like, you know, less autistic, but it's like it's not less autistic. It's just
Yeah.
managing and like teaching skills to help you. Um,
Yeah. I agree.
yeah. So and I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool that on the other side that you get that articulation, which is really, really neat. 'Cause I know parents, they love, when their kids can talk, of course, like, they always wanna say, like, "Ma" or "Dada," and, like, when they can't, it's so, so hard.
I tell them they come across to me in spirit like Einstein. Like the way Einstein would have felt like if because I feel like every child with autism
And
has a
he might have
brain
been
like
autistic
that.
too, that's what
I'm sure he
hurt.
was. But, like, I feel like every child who has autism is sort of like a brain like that that doesn't know how to handle it on the physical world. So in spirit, there is no limit they're not limited by the physicality of the brain. And so I get to tell them, like, Chopin, Mozart, Aristotle, like, all these great minds, that's the way your the person who was autistic that you're talking to now operates, where they are no longer bound by the physicality of the brain. And I will also tell you, like, energetically, people who are autistic and mentally disabled in some way, if that is not offensive, I apologize. Energetically, they're also a little brighter. There's also this kindness, there's this genuineness about them that other people tend to not have. I
Yeah,
think it's because they hate is a nuance. To hate something is a nuance because it's hate isn't actually an emotion. Hate is a basis of fear. You hate something because you don't like it, because it scares you.
right.
And so fear for someone who's autistic is just fear. I'm afraid of this. And so it doesn't have the ability to become hate. It doesn't have the ability to become cruelty. It's just fear because they don't understand nuance as well as neurotypical people. And so I think there's a lot to be learned from people who are autistic and mentally disabled where they're just very honest. Like, I'm afraid of this person. Well, not because they look a certain way. I just don't like their energy, which is fine in my opinion. And so,
Yeah,
their
you're
energy
not
makes me
gonna like
off.
everyone anyways, like, that's just a
No, yeah,
human.
absolutely not. No one's need to. But like it or I
There's
don't
plenty of
like
people
yeah, it's like
that
I don't like this dog.
I don't
It's
hate,
freak
I just
yeah.
don't like it.
Yeah, and that's fine. You don't have to like
Yep,
everything. That's not the point.
right.
But it's like they're more honest and kind, I find, because
Mhm,
their issues with not liking something is not biased. It is
right.
just
Or the
point blank.
authentic. Yeah,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
I love that. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that.
No. No, I love it too. No, I totally agree, and I think that that kind of, like, I've kind of a lot of individuals, with that diagnosis, like, the filter, the social skills, and not having an awareness, like, sometimes I love that raw honesty, and I'm like, "Oh, okay," like,
Yeah.
I can't believe you said that to me, but I'm I need to, like, write that down somewhere, like, that's really funny.
I
You never even
I've
said
been
anything.
called
Yeah,
fat by autistic kids. And they're like, he's fat. And I'm like, I am fat. Because I can tell the energy is very like they're just stating the obvious.
they're
Like
just
that
making,
man's
like, a fact, like,
yes,
yeah, they're
that
not
man's fat.
trying
And
to be rude or yeah,
yes.
it's not
And I'm
so they're
so
not
nice to them. Like the parents start apologizing, and I'm like, it's okay. I am fat, and that's fine. But then it's when the kids are like, oh my God, he's so ugly and fat. I'm like, we're gonna fight.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
they're like, why were you nice to that kid? I was like, because that kid wasn't being ugly. And so or that person. And I'm like, and
It's
they're
more like
like,
an observation, like
yeah.
a little
I'm like,
scientist, like,
it's a
"You
scientific
are."
opportunity. I am fat. If you would have called me like I don't know, a donut, I'd been like, ew. But like, and so I tell people like that it's so refreshing to just be honest, to be real. I am, and then the mom will be like, just let them know. It may not be nice. Some people may not be that nice about it, and they'll learn the behavior. But like, yeah. So I love that. I find God, I wish more people were neurodivergent. I feel like
Yeah.
the world would be a better place.
I mean, I've been told I have 2 chins before, and I'm just like, "Thank you, I love both of them." Like, like, I'm like, "Okay," like,
I told
like
people, like, "I don't think I have a 2 chins, I just have a fat neck." I would prefer to say
yeah, or
that.
like, "Are you gonna dye your hair soon because there's too much gray on top?" And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks for the reminder," like
Love my gray hair. I love everyone.
Yeah, so I also really appreciate that too. I know we're like way off topic with that, but they're just I love it. And that's the majority of individuals that I work with and I think that they're awesome. Like kids to adults, like there's just and they're all like it's all unique too. Like they're all different. I mean, once you meet one person with autism, you meet another person with autism, they could be totally different. So, kind of closing up, I know we've been talking about I feel like we could probably talk a lot, like,
We would
maybe
be
we
here for
should, like,
days,
hang out and talk another time and just do we need a second episode?
right?
I just wanted to see
Sean's
if
just
there's
this permanent
anything.
guest that's just sitting in the background.
Yeah, you're just here all the time, like, on every episode, see you every week now. Um, is there is there anything that you, feel would be really important before we kinda close up to share with the audience, either about mediumship, I mean, we kind of associate with behavior. What are kind of your closing remarks?
I will say that for people who may want to understand the work that I do better, your behavior absolutely dictates your ability to do so. The spirit world, your loved ones, they live in a world of understanding, of contentment. They know that it is not their place to change people's minds. It is their place to help educate. They want you to understand, but it is not their place to force you to do so. And so if you are going to have a very obstructed behavior towards them, then they're not going to show up. Because, and I said this to someone earlier, and I feel like they need to say this again in this podcast, and this may be way off topic. In spirit, we are connected, like we are all atoms of a brain. We're all neurons of a brain. And every individual soul, every person is a neuron in that brain that is connected to another neuron and form a hive mind of individuals, if that makes sense. Every person has their own experience in spirit, but they're all connected by a hive mind as well. And that hive mind can get cold. It can get, I'm used to being connected to everyone and I'm used to being part of a whole. And it can change the individual spirit's behaviors, not to being mean or cruel or anything like that, but just detached from humanity. And then we reincarnate, we come back into this world to experience forced separation, where connection must be earned. It must be built. It must be forced. It must be worked on in order to be had. And with the understanding that, for instance, love is so hard built, but so easily lost. And we learn the fragility and we learn the importance of love and compassion and openness and kindness and support and compassion between everybody. And when we pass, we bring that reawareness back into the hive mind of spirit and are all reminded, like, oh, that's why connection is so important. Behavior in this world dictates our connection to the afterlife. Much like if you were to cut off circulation to a finger, eventually your nerve connection to that finger in your brain will sever. And so that is a behavior. The way we act, the way we treat each other, behaviors are so important to having a healthy world. It doesn't matter what you believe in. It doesn't matter whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're pagan, whether you're what. It doesn't matter if you're spiritual, if you're atheist. It doesn't matter anything like that. It doesn't matter if you believe in this work. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in this work. The point is that the behavior of being able to be connected with one another is so important to the survival and the thriving of our species. And that is what spirit keeps trying to teach us, which why they will not give us attention when we're being cruel. Why they give us attention when we're being supportive and compassionate is because they're trying to remind us that you are about to break something that is very difficult to fix. And I think that's why I think I'm so interested in therapy and healing through psychology and behavior is because that is what has to be fixed. The behavior of how we interact with people. And I love that it comes up so often with my work as a medium.
Yeah. No, I think
No, I
that's
think that's
that's awesome, and,
awesome.
I think in today's time, I think that's a very important subject to just address too, is just that connectedness because, like we're all on this together. Like we're all, just doing life together, whatever that kind of looks like, for us, like in this life.
Yeah.
So, Sean, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And, Sean, what is the best way for somebody to connect with you if they want to either, you know, learn more about you or do a reading with you? What would be the best way to connect with you?
Sure. The best way to get a session with me would be to go to my website, excuse me, psychic-sean.com. That's psychic-sean.com. Or you can go to any of my socials. All of them are at Medium Auntie Sean, spelled out exactly. There's no spaces, there's no numbers, there's no nothing. It is just at Medium Medium
I'll
Medium
post in
Auntie
our show
Sean,
notes.
all one word, because there are a lot of fake accounts out there that a lot of other
There
professionals and
are.
other people and artists and celebrities all have fakes. I will never message you. I will never reach out to you. You always have to initiate contact with me. But that is one fail-safe way of understanding that it's not me because I am too busy. I'm either resting or working. And that's it. So I am not reaching out to people unless they message me first. So if you want to schedule a session, you would use my website. If you'd like to follow me on TikTok or Instagram or on YouTube, it's all at Medium Auntie Sean.
Great. Thank you again, Sean. It was great
Thank
having
you
you on
so
today.
much for having me. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, of course. We'll
And
have to do it
you're
again.
adorable.
All right.